President Trump tweeted as much, saying late last night, quote, "Big week coming up," unquote. The commander-in-chief will meet with the so-called Big Six at the White House today as the administration makes a major push to tackle tax reform. The group includes Speaker of the House Paul Ryan, Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell, Treasury Secretary Stephen Mnuchin, Director of the National Economic Council Gary Cohn, the President pro tempore of the Senate Orrin Hatch, and Chairman of the House Ways and Means Committee Congressman Kevin Brady. All of those people going to the White House to meet with the president today. I want to get your take on how realistic it is to get something done in this 12 days. What's your take on this upcoming meeting, John?
Oh, well, I mean, they're not going to get anything done on tax reform in these 12 days. They've got immediate emergencies to deal with, like the debt ceiling and continuing resolution for spending. The question is whether they can get something done into October and November. And I think the expectation right now is that they have to do something, but it's going to be smaller than the grand ambitions that everybody had at the beginning of the year and after the president was elected.
At this point, people are just expecting or hoping for tax cuts.
Oh, absolutely. And, what was interesting about the president's speech in Missouri last week was we did start to hear a few more details because, originally, if you remember, way back earlier this year, they came out with just a few bullet points, right? So the fact that we are starting to see this flesh out a little bit more is hopeful. However, that means the battle lines are being drawn now around some of these issues among Republicans and Democrats. And in the Senate, Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell has some of the same issues to deal with as he did on health care. You've got some warring GOP factions. You've got this, how do we pay for these tax cuts, which we all know that we need. And you've got Democrats lining up and says, oh, if there are any tax cuts for the wealthy, which we all know is just a way of framing the conversation, it's not accurate, then they're not going to do one vote.
The point you make about details is so important. The plans that have been coming out have been actually becoming more vague as they go along. So the president's tax proposals as a candidate were much more specific than what they put out in April, and even more vague back a month or so ago when this Big Six group came out with agreed upon plans. The only detail in that was that they weren't going to do this import-export tax.
Yeah. But I think the conversation is, you're seeing the conversation evolve a little bit. We know this is going to be focused on middle class, probably not high-end earners. There's going to be something in corporate taxes, but it's probably not going to be 15%. So I do think you're seeing an evolution even as we haven't seen the details, as you point out.
Do they need the
big question
Democrats?
Is, can they do something that's going to be permanent? If they do something temporary, I don't know what kind of impact that has on investment.
And do they need the Democrats to do anything? Are we going to have the kind of fights that we saw over health care? Listen to this. Reforming the tax, this is according to a Fox News Channel poll. Reforming the tax system is much more important to Republicans. 70% want the tax system reformed. 29% of Democrats want the tax system reformed. So you don't have the kind of influence and push on the Democratic side, as usual, because it's part of the president's agenda.
Chuck Schumer or Nancy Pelosi,
you don't want anything done.
Your question is very simple. What's in it for me? What will they get out of it? Yeah. And I haven't seen Republicans.
Well, how about economic growth? How about jobs?
But then Trump gets credit for the growth.
And so they're just not, what's in it for me in terms of where's the credit?
Not only where's the credit,
but why did you take a job in Congress?
But what policies that they hold dear get advanced?
Oh, I understand what you're saying.
They won't hold on to anything that benefits the wealthy, that's for sure.
And that's why they won't be involved. They won't be involved. And that's why this tax cut won't pay for themselves, by the way. These are going to be temporary tax cuts. For the middle-class tax cut, they're going to be temporary. They're not going to pay for themselves. I think the corporate tax cut, they're going to try to make that permanent. They're going to find ways to pay for it. But exactly what you said you didn't want, I think, is what you're going to get because of the time crunch.
Tax reform, not the only major item on the agenda. Let's talk about immigration. Attorney General Jeff Sessions set to hold a briefing at 11 a.m. this morning. We're going to take you there live on the president's plan for the Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals, or DACA. Kirsten, what do you think about this? What are you expecting? There's been really a debate on the president's plan to end this program after a 6-month delay.
Well, it's a highly emotional debate right now because people just think, oh, we're sending or deporting 800,000 dreamers home. Really what's happening, right, the facts are that this is an executive order, which many argue 10 states are getting ready to sue the administration
including
over this,
New York.
Including New York. So what the president has done is tried to punt to Congress and say, okay, let's get a legislative solution, one that includes both Republican and Democratic ideas on this, so that it can be permanent law and not just an executive order. So it actually will afford more stability for those dreamers moving forward than the executive order ever could.
Yeah, but again, you're not going to get the support on the Dem side. So how do you get?
Well, there's already actually a bill in Congress that both have agreed on parts of before. So there actually is, and Republicans know, right? Democrats, they love this bill, they love the Dreamers Act, but Republicans also know that this is an important constituency going forward. They can't afford to just completely neglect these dreamers who potentially could be Republican voters in the future.
Republicans are divided on this
Absolutely.
issue too, aren't
Yes.
they?
House Speaker Paul Ryan and many others have said that they support the Dreamers Act.
But isn't the president just saying, let's make a deal? Let's do something on DACA, and then maybe let's do something on wall funding or E-Verify. I mean, isn't he just inviting a compromise and a deal here?
Yeah, the Democrats will never compromise on the border wall.
Because of Harvey and the money now needed for Hurricane Harvey and the destruction, they've pushed that out to December and have agreed we won't push for the wall funding right now.
Yeah, absolutely. Hurricane Harvey funding is much more important, and that clean debt ceiling raise, which, you know, Treasury Secretary Steve Mnuchin is on board with as well.
The president still hasn't figured out how to make these guys work together. It's a very complicated beast, this Congress. It's not like, you know, a board of directors that he might have been involved with. He really hasn't figured out how to get all the pieces together to actually create legislation.
Yeah.